Welcome back to the Slow Almanac. I'm Ali. Tonight we wander together slowly to a place where nothing is in a hurry, and neither are we. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, take a moment to subscribe before we begin. That way, the next slow story will find you on Sunday night. Let your weight settle, let your hands be still. Tonight we are going to a gorge, a deep one cut into dark volcanic stone in the mountains of a large island in the western Pacific. A river runs through it. The river has been running through it for a very long time. The walls of the gorge are made of basalt, black and hexagonal and very old, and the river moves between them at the pace of something that has nowhere else to be. There is nothing you need to do here. There is nothing to follow. The river will keep moving whether you watch it or not. The stone will keep standing whether you pay attention or not. Let your breath slow down. Let your jaw go soft. You are standing at the edge of a volcanic gorge. The walls drop away on either side of you, perhaps 30 meters down, perhaps a little more. It is difficult to judge. The stone is very dark, almost black in this light, and the walls go straight down, nearly vertical, in long, clean columns. Each column is a hexagon, roughly, when you look at it from above. 6-sided, like the cells of a honeycomb, but made of stone, and each one the width of a person's torso. They run from the rim of the gorge all the way to the waterline, continuous and regular, like a bundle of pencils someone has stood on end and then cut through at the top with a very slow blade. Far below, the river moves. It is not a loud river. It is not a whitewater river. It is a river that has learned its channel so completely that it moves through it with very little effort, very little noise. A low, continuous sound, stone and water in conversation. The same conversation they have been having for 10,000 years. You can hear it from up here as a kind of hiss, a kind of breath. Nothing sudden. Nothing sharp. The air in the gorge is cooler than the air on the plateau above. It comes up from the water, carrying the smell of wet stone and something faintly mineral, faintly green. The walls hold the cool in. They have been holding it in for a long time. There are ferns growing in the cracks between the columns, small ones with fronds no longer than a finger. They have found the places where soil has gathered in the joints, where the stone has opened slightly over the centuries, and they have settled there, and they are doing very well. Their roots go into the rock. The rock doesn't mind. You sit down at the rim. Your legs hang over, not dangerously. There is a wide ledge, and the stone beneath you is solid. You can see the full sweep of the gorge from here. It curves gently to the left, following the line the river chose long ago. The far wall catches the last of the light, pale gray where the basalt has weathered on the surface, darker where it stays wet from a thin seep of groundwater running down between the columns. The water below is the color of dark jade, deep green, almost black in the shadows, lighter where it moves over shallower stone. It catches the sky in small bright patches where the surface is flat, and then the current takes those patches and pulls them downstream, and the sky appears again in a slightly different place. This is a place where time is visible, not metaphorically, literally. The columns on the far wall are a record of a single volcanic event, a single cooling, laid down in a pattern so regular it looks designed. The river at the bottom is a record of 10,000 years of water finding its way. You can see both at once from where you are sitting. The stone that was made in fire, the channel that was made by water. The fire came first, the water came after. They have been in conversation ever since. The gorge is quiet, not silent, the river sees to that, but quiet in the way a library is quiet. Something is happening here, and it is happening at a pace that does not require you to keep up. Let me say it again, in a slightly different way. You are in a deep gorge cut into dark volcanic stone. The walls are made of basalt columns, six-sided, nearly vertical, running from the rim all the way down to the water. The river at the bottom is narrow and steady, moving through the channel it has worn over thousands of years. The air is cool. It smells of water and stone. The ferns in the cracks are still. The columns on the far wall are catching the last light. You are sitting at the rim, your back straight, your hands resting. There is nothing you need to hold on to. The gorge is holding everything. The story of this gorge begins with fire, and it begins a very long time before the river arrived. The island you are on sits above a zone where the crust of the earth is unusually thin, unusually active. Below the mountains, below the plateau, below the soil and the roots of the trees, there is a place where rock is molten, where the temperature is high enough that stone flows. That molten rock, magma, has found its way to the surface here many times over many millions of years. The mountains above this gorge are themselves made of old eruptions, layer on layer, each one cooled and hardened before the next arrived. The eruption that made these walls happened roughly 100,000 years ago, give or take. It was not a violent eruption, not an explosion, not a column of ash reaching into the sky. It was a flood, a slow, vast outpouring of basaltic lava, the kind that is thin enough to flow rather than pile up, the kind that moves across a landscape the way water moves, filling valleys, spreading across plains, covering everything it touches in a layer of dark stone. The lava was very hot, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 degrees Celsius. It moved slowly, cooling at its edges and surface, while the interior stayed molten and kept flowing. When it finally stopped, when the source of the eruption quieted, when there was no more lava to feed the flow, the cooling began in earnest. This is where the columns come from. When basaltic lava cools, it contracts. It shrinks very slightly as the heat leaves it, and as it shrinks, it develops cracks. The cracks begin at the surface, where the cooling is fastest, and they work their way down into the still warm interior. The pattern the cracks make is determined by the physics of how stress distributes itself across a contracting surface, and that physics, given a uniform material cooling at a roughly uniform rate, produces hexagons, not always perfect hexagons, sometimes 5 sides, sometimes 7, but hexagons most often, because the hexagon is the shape that divides a flat surface into equal regions with the least total length of boundary. The lava finds this shape the way water finds the lowest point, not by choosing, but by following the path that requires the least work. The cracks deepen. They follow the direction of cooling, which is perpendicular to the surface of the flow. In a lava flow that is thick and level, the cooling front moves downward, and so the cracks move downward too, and the columns that form are vertical. Each crack defines the boundary between 2 columns. Each column is a prism of basalt, 6-sided, running from top to bottom of the flow, as continuous as a piece of wood grain. This process takes time. The lava flow that made these walls was perhaps 60 or 80 meters thick. For a flow that thick, the interior may have stayed hot enough to remain partially molten for years, perhaps decades. The columns formed slowly, from the top down and the bottom up, meeting somewhere in the middle. When you look at the walls of this gorge, you are looking at the record of that cooling. Every column boundary is a crack that opened in contracting stone 100,000 years ago and has not moved since. The lava cooled, the plateau hardened, and then, for a very long time, nothing happened. Or rather, nothing happened quickly. Rain fell on the plateau. The rain soaked into the soil, found the joints between the columns, worked its way down through the rock. The volcanic rock weathered slowly at the surface, the minerals in it breaking down, releasing iron that stained the stone a faint orange-brown in places. Trees grew. Their roots found the joints. The joints widened very slightly over centuries, and then the river arrived. The river did not cut this gorge all at once. The river did not arrive and begin carving. The river arrived as a small stream, running across the surface of the hardened lava plateau, following whatever low point the landscape offered. At first, it would have been a shallow, wandering thing, spreading across the rock, going nowhere in particular. But water, over time, finds the line of least resistance. And in a landscape made of columnar basalt, the line of least resistance is the joint between columns. The joints between basalt columns are the weakest points in the rock. They are the boundaries where two separate columns meet, where the bond is only as strong as the minerals that have crystallized in the gap. Water finds these joints. Water widens them. A joint that is 1 millimeter wide becomes 2 millimeters wide over centuries. The stone on either side of the joint is undercut. A small block loosens. The river carries the block away. This is how the gorge was cut. Not by the river grinding smoothly through solid stone, but by the river finding and removing blocks. The basalt columns, because they are already divided into discrete units by the joints, are vulnerable to this kind of removal. The river doesn't need to dissolve the stone or abrade it into powder. It needs only to find the joint, widen it, and wait for the block to become free. A block of basalt the size of a small car, once it is undercut on 3 sides and loosened from its neighbors, will eventually fall into the river. The river, in flood, will move it. It will roll it downstream, slowly, over years, and the block will abrade the riverbed as it moves, wearing the floor of the channel deeper. And then the block itself will be worn down, corner by corner, into smaller stones, and those stones into gravel, and that gravel into sand, and the sand will travel downstream and eventually reach the sea. The walls of the gorge you are looking at are the walls that remain after millions of such blocks have been removed. The river has been doing this for roughly 10,000 years, since the last great period of glacial melt raised the water table and gave the streams of this island the energy to cut downward. 10,000 years is not very long in geological terms, but it has been long enough to cut 30 meters of depth into the basalt plateau, 3 millimeters per year on average, less than the thickness of a coin. The river below you is still doing this. Right now, in this moment, the water is pressing into the joints at the base of the columns. It carries fine sediment, particles of rock worn from further upstream, and that sediment acts as an abrasive, slowly grinding the joint faces smooth and then smoother and then open. In flood season, when the river rises and moves faster, larger stones roll along the floor of the channel, deepening it. In dry season, when the river is low and clear, the chemistry of the water works quietly on the minerals in the joints, dissolving a little here, loosening a little there. The river is not in a hurry. It has the same relationship to time that the lava had. It works at the pace the material allows, and it does not work faster than that, and it does not need to. What the river has found over 10,000 years is the exact line of least resistance through this stone. Not approximately, exactly. Every bend in the gorge is a place where the joints ran in a slightly different direction, where the river followed the weakness rather than cutting straight through the strength. The curve you can see from where you are sitting, the gentle leftward sweep of the gorge. That curve follows a set of joints that angled slightly to the left in the original lava flow. The river found them. The river has been following them ever since. The gorge is, in this way, a map of the lava's cooling. The river has read that map slowly for 10,000 years and carved its channel along the lines that were already written in the stone. Come back to where you are sitting, the rim of the gorge, the dark columns dropping away below you, the river far down, moving in its channel, that low, continuous sound, stone and water, the same sound it has been making since before any person came to sit here and listen. The ferns in the cracks are still. The far wall is losing its light now, going darker, the columns becoming one continuous shadow. The water below is darker too, the jade color deepening toward black. The air coming up from the gorge is cooler than it was a few minutes ago. You don't need to hold any of what you've heard. The lava, the cooling, the joints, the river finding its way. None of it needs to stay in your mind. It is happening whether you remember it or not. The river is pressing into the joints right now, in the dark at the bottom of the gorge, doing the same small work it has always done. The columns are standing as they have stood for 100,000 years, waiting for the river to find the next block. You can let all of it go. You can let the sound of the water carry it downstream. The gorge is quiet. You are quiet. The stone is very, very quiet. If you'd like more of these, you can follow along quietly. The button is just below this video. Sleep well. The river moves in the dark below. The columns stand. The ferns are still in the cracks between them. Somewhere downstream, a small stone is moving along the riverbed. It has been moving in small increments for a long time. It will keep moving. It will reach the sea eventually. There is no hurry. You are very still. The gorge is very still. The water moves.